Jen.
Hi, Em.
How are you?
I'm doing good. You know, my voice is still a little scratchy,
You were a little sick last week.
a little sick. Something's going around.
But you did fall in love with a neti pot.
I
think that's a pivotal growth point for many adults.
That's beautiful. You know, there are a lot of polarized feelings about neti pots.
Because you can get brain eating amoebas from it.
Yeah.
But you got to use the filtered sterile water.
And that's what I did.
And so you were very safe.
I was as safe as I possibly could be.
You know, we say to our children, to my child,
children,
to the children of our world, of our country, do dangerous things safely.
Wow.
Yeah, it's how you encourage, exploring play.
Wow. No one's ever said that to me. Can you say that to me?
Yeah, Jen, just do dangerous things safely.
Okay, thank you.
Like when you gambled at the casino this weekend.
Yes. I don't know how safe that was, but
do people still smoke in casinos?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
Actually, by chance, I'm going to a concert at a casino this weekend, and now I'm like, oh, is there going to be a lot of secondhand smoke?
I think they have to do it in certain places. Actually, I don't know. I saw a guy smoking a cigar, and the other guy was like, "Go away from here," but he wasn't like, "Put that out."
He just said, "Go away."
He said, "Go away."
My mom. So something you should know about my mom is my mom is like this, like very specific things that she is like, real bleeding heart for. One of those is smokers for some reason. My mother is not a smoker. She's never been a smoker. I have no idea where this comes from. But my mom is always like, I just feel like smokers got cast aside. They used to get their own sections in restaurants and now they're treated like pariahs. And I'm like, why are you so like...
It's so funny that
she's not a smoker.
Like so worried about them.
She's just like, she's really, she really feels like they have been criminalized,
I really feel like people don't smoke cigarettes like they used to.
Yeah, because they're vaping.
Yeah, they're vaping. And also, like, what was that like campaign?
Actually, you know what? As someone who has to clean out the garden beds in our Westchester location once a week, people are smoking cigarettes.
Is
I
that
don't
how
see
we
them
got
smoking it, but I sure see the cigarette butts in our garden.
Is that how we got the tomatoes there? Is there some sort of connection? We got a random tomato plant.
Like a huge tomato plant. Like when it was growing so many tomatoes. No, but that's what we call a volunteer garden. Like a bird dropped probably a tomato seed or something.
Wow.
Or a tomato and it plants it and we got a large amount of tomatoes.
Do you think that the birds are also dropping the cigarettes maybe? Like maybe the birds had a rough day.
I actually never at one point thought about that. Yeah, maybe they're smoking. They're smoking. They're into the nicotine.
This is just a fun fact.
Here's the issue is that today's episode is about ADHD. And so far, we're starting out great as an example with giving you zero education.
Wait, let me first tell you this because we have ADHD and this has nothing to do with anything. Bill, my husband, will take nuts, just random nuts that we have, and he puts them outside in the morning and he says, they're for our outside kids.
Well, that's nice. Do they come and take it for the squirrels?
The squirrels come and take it and then they eat it.
Oh, I think that's really lovely.
Isn't that nice? And so he in the morning, he'll be like, did you feed the outside kids?
And you do.
And we do. Isn't that so nice?
I think that's really nice. It's definitely rats. I mean, you live in Philadelphia, so it's like...
I haven't seen one yet, but I'm waiting.
The rats are taking it like you are feeding.
I know.
You're just feeding rodents.
Listen. They can be our outside kids too.
If we didn't have to get moving on this episode, I would tell you about the time that I got chased by a rat. Okay.
For another episode.
For another one. Let's talk about ADHD. Yeah. I'm going to be honest. We have waited to do this episode. We've talked about ADHD a bunch. We have openly talked about us both being diagnosed with ADHD. And we also feel like over the past 5 years, there's been a lot of misinformation about ADHD, specifically from social media. And so we were sort of like, I feel like we were like waiting our turn.
Yeah.
We were like, kind of like, you know what, there's so much conversation around this. So we want to talk about it. We want to talk a little bit about some facts and some studies around this. And I think the most important thing for us to understand is we have two very different experiences. I was diagnosed with ADHD as a child. through psychoeducational testing, because the teacher was like, this girl definitely has fucking ADHD. You were diagnosed as an adult, and the experiences of having ADHD, I think, greatly matter of when you were diagnosed or realized.
Yes. Yes. And I think, one of the big differences, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I didn't know you as a child, is that I did not have the hyperactivity component.
Yeah.
And because I didn't have that component, it wasn't recognized in me at all.
Yeah.
Like I was
And most
very
women don't, right? There was a
right.
reason. So statistically, the average age of diagnosis for men is 8 years old, and for women, it's 35.
Right.
And so there's a very specific reason for that. So when we think typically about the most mainstream idea of ADHD, it is typically how a male presents more than a female. So ADHD is like historically underdiagnosed in women, and it's often diagnosed for anxiety or depression, which you were diagnosed with as a child.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest pieces of my ADHD was the overstimulation and
Mhm.
how that played into my anxiety. And yeah, I was diagnosed with anxiety. And listen, ADHD plays into those things very much so.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that we added it to the therapy group too, as we have we have an incredible clinician who does ADHD testing, because having this information is so helpful in understanding yourself and understanding yourself in the context of therapy and treatment. It is really, really helpful to understand that, okay, because I have ADHD, I'm going to be overstimulated more so than someone who maybe doesn't have ADHD. And not knowing that was really hard for me growing up, because it feels like something that's personal to you. You're doing something wrong. Why can everyone else do this and why can't I do this? Um, I have a very specific memory of being in fourth grade. And you remember, how we had like binders and then you would hole punch those binders.
Yes.
So yeah, I would like hole punch all these papers and then all my papers like would fall out of my bag and I was just, things were just a mess. And I would look at other people who like had it all together. Everything was very organized. And I was just like, how am I unable to like get it together?
Shame.
Yeah, a lot of shame around it, right? There were people who were like writing in their planners, color
Uh-huh.
coding things. I was all over the place.
And the
Big
funny thing is,
shocker.
I was having that same experience, except for because like I was incredibly lucky that my mom was a school psychologist. And so
Yes.
early on, my mom was like, "Oh, this kid has got issues. She's talking late. She's reading late. She is definitely not listening here at all." And so I got diagnosed with a ton of learning disabilities very early on, including an auditory processing disorder and ADHD. And so I was having the same exact experience with you, except for what was happening for me was my mom said, "Wow, this kid has zero organizational skills. We're going to get her help." And
Yeah.
twice a week, I had a lovely woman. Her name was Karen Eigenbrot, Miss E. I believe she's still, actually, I don't know if that's her last name anymore. I think she got married at some point, but
Wow.
she still works at the middle school I went to. My mom, she was the special skills teacher. My mom had her come over twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, helped me with all of my organization, worked with study skills, and spent like basically years giving me skills that I would never have gotten. So by
Wow.
the time I really, really struggled academically until I honestly got to the end of high school and college. I did great because I had been given so many years of skills. And I think that is the part that is so difficult, is because I did not have the shame, because it was like, oh, Emmalee learns different. And so we're going to get her support. It made a huge difference of how I viewed myself.
Yeah.
And so there is, I'll hear people say, like, well, what's the point of getting diagnosed? There's a really good example. I'm not saying, when we talk about testing for kids, people are really quick to be like, well, they're just going to try to put my kids on meds. Testing does not just need to be about medicine. Testing gives you information of what you want to do with that. It does not have to include medication at all if that's not what feels right for you. But knowing something says, oh, fuck, this is not me. I'm not bad. There's something that's different about me. Here's how we get the skills to do it. And I think that that is incredibly important. It's one of the reasons why we're also a proponent of getting tested and not just doing a self-diagnosis, is like, let's figure out ways to get you support.
Yeah. So Well, as we said, while boys with ADHD, they're more likely to display hyperactivity. Girls often exhibit inattentiveness, perfectionism, and masking behaviors. I think the masking behavior thing is really interesting. Um, there was a study in the Journal of Attention Disorders in 2019 that highlighted how many women develop compensatory strategies like people pleasing and overworking to mask ADHD related struggles. They called it the good girl masking effect. It refers to how many women with ADHD unconsciously develop coping mechanisms to hide their struggles due to societal expectations. Young girls are typically expected to be quiet and well behaved and organized, and those with ADHD may internalize their symptoms rather than acting out, leading to this misdiagnosis or it being overlooked entirely, which I think, once again, is something that I very much experienced growing up as I kind of like shoved it all down and hid it, masked it in a lot of ways. Um, so, once again, women with ADHD, instead of the outward hyperactivity, they might overcompensate through perfectionism. They might mask with impulsivity, with people pleasing, suppress their hyperactivity with internal restlessness. So, like instead of physically moving around, they may experience constant mental chatter or anxiety. Use routines or rigid structures as a crutch. So they may create strict to-do lists or schedules to avoid being seen as messy or lazy.
Mm.
Um, and I think this is really interesting, like the narrative, if you weren't diagnosed earlier in life to really understand how this plays a role for you, that the narrative that you may have created about yourself, right? Of like, I'm lazy, I don't know how to do this. Why can everyone else do this and I can't? Those narratives stick with you
Mm-hmm.
instead of you saying, well, listen, I have ADHD and that's why this is more difficult for me. And this is how I'm going to figure out how to work with this. So I think understanding maybe what those narratives are that you've created for yourself and how they may be playing a role today is also really important because, those narratives can lead to burnout. They lead to increased anxiety and depression and a difficulty with self-identity. So that's why another reason why we wanted to do this episode, this level to bring a level of self-awareness, to help you understand, like, is this something that fits for me? And once again, because there's so much misinformation out there, everyone's self-diagnosing. We really believe in getting tested to understand this about yourself.
Well, because it's like, a lot of these, because a lot of the symptoms you can have, especially for women in ADHD, are also symptoms you can have just from burnout and stress.
Yeah.
Right. So if I'm struggling with emotional dysregulation, I'm also going through menopause. That doesn't necessarily mean that I have ADHD, but it can mean that I'm struggling with these same traits and symptoms. And so when you look, there was like some study that it was like a study from Yale that was like they did this like massive compilation of all of the information of ADHD on TikTok, and it was something like 80% of it was incorrect.
Right.
So like just sit here and say like you may have ADHD if like yeah sure like those are true, and also you might not. You might just be like a fucking human in
Yeah.
late stage capitalism in like an insane society where things are falling apart, right? Like
Yes.
so like there's like lots of ways this could look, but I think you can take it and say, well, what do I want to do with this? Because the thing that's really important is like the action that comes after that insight and awareness, which is like, wow, I don't know if I have ADHD. Maybe when I get tested, maybe I don't. I really don't know. But what I do know is that the way that I'm currently living my life is not working for me.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that is I am not setting boundaries. Maybe I'm doing too much people pleasing. Maybe I'm struggling with routine and structure. Maybe I have way too much stress. I'm not getting sleep. I'm not taking care of myself physically. Like any of these things can all go in together and they can look really, really similar.
Can I ask you what is one of the biggest things that you have had to work through with your ADHD?
I never shut the fuck up. Like my I sent you when you my yearbook photo from like what was that? Like 2003.
Yeah.
And it's like
Yeah.
it's more like most outspoken. Like
Yeah.
like I have like no filter.
Right.
So like I will really say stuff that like gets me in hot water.
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean? Like I'm just like gonna say stuff and that's gonna
Just
be
like
really
comes
hard.
out.
Yes, because I never had the masking part.
Yeah.
I didn't develop that part.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like I like that part of you that like says like fake it or mask it or I don't even think it's as conscious as that. But that subconscious thing, I did not get that trait.
Wow.
And
Honestly,
it's hard to say
jealous.
because yours, well, that's the thing. Yours might be more socially appropriate and celebrated.
Right.
I disagree that it's better.
Right. Well, I think, right, there's pros and cons to everything.
Yeah, I think it's more socially appropriate for women,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Yes. Um, but yeah, I think that, but also there's so many ways that it's helped you too. And that's a lot of
Yeah.
what we talk about also. You know, we both have ADHD. We run a business together and
We
we
would not
talk,
be, I don't think we'd be able to run this business without both having ADHD. There's
yeah,
so many different things happening at so many times
yes,
that we are so, because we're also, the other thing about having ADHD is we're incredibly adaptable.
yes,
Like we're actually both very creative and very adaptable.
yeah,
So like when something happens, I don't freeze, right? I'm just like,
yeah,
all right, let's come up with a fucking solution, which in
yes,
some ways for people can feel also the hard part is in the relational aspect.
yes,
Because I'll go to creating solutions, because I'll adapt super quickly, that can feel overwhelming with other people in relationships because they don't have as much time to adjust.
right.
Or it can feel like I or like is dismissive in some way.
Mm,
But I'm like, we just got to have a fucking solution. Like we got to move. That's part of the ADHD for me,
we got to
which
keep
works. I
moving.
do think doesn't always benefit me in relationships, but works super well with a business.
Yes,
Pros and cons,
100%.
baby.
Because in the business, we have to constantly be adapting to new
Yeah.
situations, and there's so much flying at you at so many times, right? You got to adjust constantly. There's so many things. So I think that's another thing that I think is really important to talk about. We talk a lot about like here are some of the symptoms that come up, but like what are also some of the benefits? What are the ways in which um this may be really helpful for you in a lot of ways. So like one of the ways that ADHD shows up is getting overly like focused on a task, right? And like not so you can adapt and you can adjust, but there's also this like if you're really into something, you're really into it.
Yeah.
Um, there are ways that that could be really helpful. And there are ways that it could be really not helpful. What
We
are you
took a
gonna
pottery class and we took a pottery class, right? And Jen was like,
say?
oh, I should do this. Like, this should be my new thing. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're going to invest like $1,000 into buying a pottery wheel for like an activity you're going to do for like 2 months, 2 weeks, honestly. Like, it's such an ADHD trait to be like, this is my new hobby. Let me spend a ton of money on it.
But let me tell you, by the end of that class, there was
You
no
did.
way I was investing. I was horrible. I was not.
Funny is
That,
like, I think of you as like very talented and creative and detail oriented. And I'm not going to lie to you. It wasn't looking good by the end.
no,
It was not the best work I've ever
I'm
seen.
telling you, there's
Where
certain
mine was
things.
shockingly good,
Yours was
actually.
really good. There's certain things creatively I'm great at, other things creatively
You gave up
really
real
bad
fast,
at.
also.
I would the fact that I couldn't like touch it, you know what I mean? Like we thought it was going to be like a ghost moment, right? Like we're like
We were
we're
holding
like
each other and embracing.
we're
We'll put
holding
up photos of it. Yeah. And it wasn't. It's not what happened. It's not the
no,
situation that came from this
no,
at
no.
all.
We just like kept moving it and then it kept falling
Yeah.
over. And so I gave
Um,
up.
I want to talk a little bit more about emotional dysregulation because when
Yes.
we think typically about ADHD, we think a lot about disorganization, executive functions, all that stuff. Emotional dysregulation is a huge part of this.
Yeah.
Um, and once again, it's a part that I think there is a lot of shame around.
Yeah.
So when I talk about emotional dysregulation, intense emotions that feel overwhelming or out of proportion for the situation.
Yeah.
So the
That's so
reaction is
common.
bigger than the situation.
Yeah. Also, there's a level of rejection sensitivity that comes up for people who
Mm-hmm.
have ADHD, which is this kind of like extreme emotional pain from any perceived criticism or rejection. So that rejection sensitivity is also very present with someone who has ADHD.
Mm-hmm. So like in relationships, small disagreements can feel like deep betrayals, making conflict resolution more challenging. So
Yeah.
often rupture can be bigger in relationships with people with ADHD, and repair can be more difficult.
If we talk about relationships too, right? Like that I've, we've seen a lot of couples and couples who come in where one partner, has ADHD, the other partner doesn't. And the partner without ADHD is having trouble understanding the partner with ADHD. So there's a lot that is at play too in relationships. Um, in terms of maybe struggling to maintain routines or chores, or maybe a shared calendar in some way,
Mm.
procrastinating on like shared tasks. Um, and so the partner without ADHD who doesn't understand the brain of the partner with ADHD, they may feel like they're carrying this kind of like unfair mental and physical burden or labor, right? Because they're like, well, I, said I'm going to do the laundry. I'm going to do the laundry. Like, what's the problem? So to really understand if you have a partner with ADHD, this is also a really important episode because it can really help you understand um, just the differences in how you process things, how you go about things, how you go about chores, how you work together. One of the things I work with my husband is he will like fire off all of the things that like we have to do around the house. And
This is me in my marriage.
well, yeah, is
This is
it?
me.
Yeah. And I say to him, I can't process all those things at once. Like I literally have to say to him,
Mhm.
you have to give me one thing at a time or I'm going to forget all of it.
Mhm.
Right? Like I need to do one thing at a time. So I have to constantly remind him like because he's firing it off because he has anxiety, right? So like
Yeah.
here's where it comes into play. He has anxiety, so he has to fire off and like get it out of his mind. And I have
Mhm.
ADHD, so he's firing it off, and I can't listen to like every single thing that he's
Yeah.
firing off. So we have to constantly figure that out together. Like how do we manage that? So I also think figuring out how it plays a role in your own relationship.
Well, and let's talk about the part of ADHD of craving novelty and struggling with routine. And
Yes.
here's the thing, many long term relationships and marriage is boring and routine and stable. And that could feel really suffocating for you, actually, right? So, feeling restless or easily bored in your long term commitments, whether that be a job, jumping from job to job, or a relationship or hobbies or whatever those. But sometimes that need for excitement can lead to unintentional instability or seeking novelty outside the relationship. What that might look like is emotional affairs or flirting or just being unhappy and starting fights for no reason.
Yeah. That it's interesting, like that routine piece of it, right? That like, because a lot of people would look at routine as like, this gives me safety, this gives me
Yeah.
comfort,
In theory.
in theory,
Yeah.
where someone who has ADHD might not feel that way,
Yeah.
right? Like, I need novelty, I need something new. It's so funny as you were saying that, when Emily and I were building the business, we always would say November, for whatever reason, is the time in which we like make a big change in the
We're
business.
like, we're just going to ruin our lives. We'll just change everything.
And
October,
now,
November, what can we blow up?
and now looking back at that, I'm like, what was going on
Right?
there?
Where it was like some way of like, oh no, the winter is coming. Let's not be bored. Let's like create complete chaos.
Right? And we would make this joke where we were like,
We're
every
like, we'll
November
sign a
we
lease
make
for a massive building. It'll be fun.
it'll be fun, it'll be great. And then we're like, why are we dying?
Yeah.
Do you think that was what was going on? I'm not
No, I
sure.
don't know. I have no idea. I don't.
Yeah, see,
Um,
even
mhm.
sometimes we can't even figure it out.
Yeah. Um, okay, so let's talk about once again how these signs affects all your relationships, right? An ADHD partner can struggle with listening while the other partner can feel unheard. Non-ADHD partner can take on more planning, organization, or remembering responsibilities, which leads to more burnout and mental load. We have tons of people that come in and say, I have a partner with ADHD, and it's actually really difficult to navigate. Um, Unintentional hurt feelings are big in relationship. Forgetfulness or distraction can be misinterpreted as carelessness or lack of love. This is something that is big. I am not someone who gets overly obsessed in relationships. I'll get obsessed with things, but not relationships. And so then I'm like, oh, like, some people like really like into birthdays. This is so hard for me because I'm so not like that. And then I'll be like, oh, I completely neglected my partner on his fucking birthday.
Right.
And I don't think he cares. I don't, and also if you knew my partner, he would never admit it if he did. Um, but I can get really invested in something else. And then sometimes you miss people in your life.
Yeah. It's so interesting because you're such like a presence person. But birthdays don't do it for you.
Am I a presents person? Think
Like
that through now.
you're so good at giving presents.
Yeah. No.
You're so good at it.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
easy though. But I'll
And
like
you're a
won't tell
party.
you happy
You're also
birthday on the actual day.
and you're also you're also a party person.
I love a party.
You know what I mean? So it's like it's just that's just the first thought that came to mind. So it's you would think that birthdays would be your thing.
No.
Yeah, wow.
I don't
No.
know why.
No.
But today, on the day we're recording this, is my daughter's 6th birthday.
Yes.
And so like
Happy
I'm good at like the prep,
birthday.
right? So like I ordered like all the decorations last week, but then we were in the office until 10 o'clock last night, Jen. And so so I like
Yeah.
call my husband. I'm like, you're gonna have to set it all up, but I don't worry, I bought it all. Good luck. So like part
You
of my
do
ADHD is like I have amazing ideas. My follow through is garbage.
you do the pre-planning.
I do great pre-planning, but actual execution
Oh my God,
bad.
please announce what Millie said about me.
Oh, we were in the car.
Changed
We were
my
in the car. We
life.
were with my in-laws. I don't even know how it came up. Like somehow it came up and she goes, my Millie says, my mom owns a business. She owns a business with my Aunt Jen who loves me.
That is so
Isn't that so
nice. I
cute?
think about it all the time.
And I'm like, what?
That is
It's
so
true, but like, what if
nice.
like that's so interesting that that is like
What
stayed in
truly
her head
happens.
and that,
Yeah. Yeah. But it's nice because like, I know there's always a worry for you of like, are you working too much? That like she thinks about
What'd she
the
say last night on the phone? She goes,
what she say? What she say?
we're in the office. It's so late. She called me on the phone and she was like, well, and I was like, I'm still at work, babe. I'm not getting home till late. Daddy's doing bedtime tonight. She goes, are you in the Westchester office, the Philly office, or which office? Where are you? Where are you right now? And I was like, I'm in the Philly office. And she's like, okay.
But I think it's nice because she
And then she
must,
said, I had Chipotle. I
yeah,
said, that's great, babe.
that is great. What a great like
Mm-hmm.
pre-birthday
It's
dinner.
great.
But
Mm-hmm.
it's nice because she must be thinking like even when we're together, like we're
Yeah.
thinking about her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's really
And I
nice.
and I want her to see that you can like love your job or not love your job. You know what I mean? Like I really like I do not care what this kid ends up doing in her life.
Right.
There's a lot of conversations right now. Like I feel like she's like getting to the age where people like comparing like who's reading now and who's doing what. And like there's a little bit of this like undertone of like mommy wars of like, where your kid's at. I could not give a shit if this kid goes to college. I'm like, you should be a mason. Do you know how hard it is to find a good mason? That is the way to
100%.
go.
They make so much money too.
They can do whatever they want because there's not a lot of them. But I am like, I don't care if she like graduates top of her class or like is the most academic because I was never like that. And I feel like
Yeah.
I'm doing just fine in my life. A few questions. Somebody said, I was just diagnosed with ADHD at 35. How do I unlearn years of negative self-talk? It's not going to happen in a day, baby. So one of the things I want you to do is I want you to grieve the fact that that diagnosis came so late. This is a conversation about grief. What would my life had been if I had I feel incredibly lucky that I had a diagnosis so young that I got skills young. I I am the exception, not the rule. My story is a unique story for women.
Yeah.
And I feel like I was given a step ahead with getting that. I say this to parents all the time. Early, so many parents don't want to test their kids young. I disagree. There's so many services you can get that don't include anything to do with medication. So
And
get your kids tested. You don't have to do anything. It's just information. You don't have to do shit with the results. It's just information. You don't even have to go through the school. If you want it to be private and secret, you can hire someone outside.
yeah. And it's interesting because, and please correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not a parent, but I'm just thinking about how I wonder sometimes if there's a worry of like, okay, if I get my kid a diagnosis, how are they going to feel
Yeah.
about that diagnosis? And what is their, messaging going to be
Mm-hmm.
about it? But my sense is as a parent, you get to,
Yeah.
you
Just
know,
close in whatever way.
you get to disclose in whatever way, and you get to relay that information in a way that's really healthy for the kid.
And I think for me, it helped me to understand
Right.
why I struggled. And because I had an older brother who had zero learning differences and just did, my older brother was just very, very smart, did great academically. And I always felt like a fucking dumbass next to him.
Yeah.
And it really helped me to be like, oh, I'm different and our brains work differently and we have different skills. But every child is different. And this is one of the importance of knowing your child and
Yeah.
knowing what you should share with your child, what's best for them, because every kid is so different.
Do you feel like there was a way it was explained to you where it helped you? Okay. All right, cool.
So many years ago. No idea. I'll ask my mom.
Yeah, as your mom.
Yeah, I'll ask my mom. Whatever she did, she did a great job.
But I think understanding too and recognizing where that negative self-talk comes from also. Yeah. Like if you hear yourself saying, "Oh, I'm so lazy because I can't get this done." You know, like I'm a piece of whatever you're saying to yourself, the things that you have been saying to yourself for so long, recognize when you're saying them. And that's when you can start to reframe it. No, I'm just different and I need to find different ways of figuring out how to best complete things, how to get things done, ways that work best for me, which leads us into our next question. I keep missing deadlines at work, but and hyper focus on random tasks. How can I manage this? This is me. Time blocking.
Did you write this in?
Yeah, I typed this in for us.
You're like, every Canva will be perfect, but I'll get nothing done that's actually due this week.
It's me.
I haven't paid a tax or a bill, but shit, that Canva.
But the Canva, it will look real good. Time blocking is really important. Time blocking is when you put it in your calendar. This is something that's really helpful for the both of us, is when we put a task in our calendar, right? It's not just for an appointment. It's not just for like meeting someone. Putting a specific task in the calendar. Sometimes I will set an alarm for when the task should be over.
That's a good idea.
Which is really important for me because if I don't, I will never stop. So that's really important. Like the other day I was like, oh, I'll put this into Canva. And then I texted and Nikki was like, are you sure you don't want me to just like put it on letterhead? And I was like, no, I'll do it. And then I was like, actually, fuck it. Nikki, please do it because I will like take forever.
I'm so proud of you for that.
Thank you. Body doubling is another thing that's really helpful, which is working alongside someone. You can even do that virtually. Emmalee and I do that a lot.
Yeah, we do. A ton.
Is sometimes we will just be on Zoom doing tasks,
yeah.
even if we're not talking. It's really helpful in holding yourself accountable. External reminders is really helpful. Sometimes something I do is I will time myself. So if I'm folding laundry, I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, but I will fold laundry in front of the TV. But then the laundry will just sit next to me and nothing will happen. Does that happen to anyone else? Is that just me?
Yes.
And so during the commercials, I say I'm going to fold as much as possible until it's done. I guess that's a problem for you because you don't have commercials, do you?
I don't have commercials.
Well, I try to fold.
I don't have cable.
I try to fold as much as possible in a specific period of time. So timing yourself or like playing games with yourself is also really helpful.
That does it for you.
Yeah, that does it for me.
Okay.
Someone wrote in, does ADHD affect my ability to regulate emotions? I feel like I overreact to small things. Yes.
Yeah, that's it. It's the ADHD.
As we said,
100%.
Linked to emotional dysregulation. Absolutely. I've always, yeah.
It's your Em and Jen. One more.
Okay.
Sorry. Our time is
I'm
run
sorry.
out here.
Who knew? I'm sorry.
Who knew?
The ADHD. Can't keep track.
We should have time blocked the episode.
Damn it. I've always struggled with keeping my house clean. How do I stop feeling like I'm failing as an adult? That is another piece of like
shame.
Being hard on yourself. There's another thing called the 1 minute rule. If it takes less than a minute, just do it now instead of procrastinating. Procrastinating is a really big thing for people with ADHD. Visual cues, having like clear bins that are like labeled to reduce the like out of sight, out of mind. I don't know if like you ever experienced this with the fridge, like when things are in drawers, I don't even know they're there. And then food waste.
And then feel like overwhelmed with food decisions. This is like another thing we've talked about. Yeah.
Yes. once again, body doubling. Another thing, the Pomodoro method, cleaning for 10 to 15 minutes and then taking a break. It gives you these like small wins, and the progress, is something that kind of gives you that positive reinforcement in a lot of ways. All right, let's go to Dear Em and Jen.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Dear Emma and Jen, my spouse and I keep struggling navigating relationships with our parents' new spouses. Three of our parents remarried while we were adults, so we don't consider these new spouses to be step parents. The new spouses seem to struggle with jealousy over our parents paying attention to us and our family, and they end up taking it out on us no matter how inclusive we are with them. Recently, I learned from an extended family member that my husband's new spouse, the one he married 5 years ago, seemed to be bad-mouthing me and saying things that weren't true about me during an event my extended family were at when I wasn't present. How do we continue to have relationships with our parents if their spouses behave like this? Man, when adults behave like children, it's a real problem. And this spouse is behaving like a child.
Yeah.
So you have a few options, right? They've been together for 5 years. It's not nothing amount of time. Where are you at in your relationship to have a hard conversation with them? And do you want your dad, that one to be one-on-one with your dad, a one-on-one with your dad's spouse? How do you want to communicate that? I guess what I'm asking is, what are you looking for the end result to be? Because if people are behaving like children, you can't guarantee they're going to respond like adults. And so what am I looking for to come out of this? We don't have control over what people think about us and what they say about. We actually don't. It sounds shitty. And of course you want to sort of like defend your honor and protect yourself. But I guess the question is, what are you looking for? Is the question just about going to your dad, hey, this is a thing that's come up, but I don't really care what's being said about me. I just care if you and I are okay. Right. And what do I do with this, right? Is it really important for you to have close relationships with these spouses? Like you said, these are not your step parents. They're partners of your parents. Right. And so you get to decide what it looks like for you and what feels important for you.
And after setting those boundaries, right? If the important thing for you, right, is maintaining a relationship with your parents, then does that mean that you need to talk to your parents about, okay, I want specific time with you separate from your spouse? That's important to me. What kind of boundaries do you need to set in your relationship with your parent in order to take care of that relationship? I think that piece is really important. What do those boundaries look like? How do you set them? Yeah. And what kind of conversations do you want to have? And I think what you said, in terms of like, what are your expectations about what the end result looks like, is really important going into this. When you bring any new person into a dynamic, and I know, it's been some time, it takes a lot of time for the system to adjust. You are part of that system, and you get to contribute to that system in a way that feels healthy for you. And so the system is adjusting, and you're saying this dynamic in the way that it is does not feel right for me. And so we're not looking for cutoff, but we're looking for a conversation that can lead to some sort of adjustment in the system in a way that feels healthy for you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Shrink Chicks.
We'll see you back here next week for another session.
In the meantime, if you want a question answered or a topic discussed, follow us on Instagram at ShrinkChicks. And if you're looking to get connected with a therapist like us to start or continue your therapeutic journey, visit thetherapygroup.com. Just fill out a contact form on our website, and we will personally match you with one of our amazing therapists. And for all of our therapists and group practice owners out there, we also offer group practice consulting.
And if you're looking to support yourself further and support our show, check out our amazing merch options at shrinkchicks.com/merch and our Know Yourself, Grow Yourself journal on Amazon. Also, if you'd be so kind, we'd love a rating, review, and for you to share with a friend or an enemy or a mother-in-law, honestly, whoever needs it, so that we can keep reaching more people on our mission to bring mental health topics to your ears every week.
Thanks for being here with us, and don't forget to grow yourself. You got to know yourself.